Welcome to the third episode of The Opinion Piece. We are talking about health and safety. Week one, we did an introduction, and then last week we kind of went through all the different areas of health and safety, CDM, regs, etc. Jack is back in the studio. This week, we're going to focus on the biggest killer in construction, which, as we all know, is mental health and suicides. It's not a particularly positive piece, but it's something we have to talk about. And it's a huge part of what we're doing here at the Build Network, improving working conditions, getting these numbers down. Jack, welcome back. Not a positive piece by any means, but I think the sad thing is ONS are now several months, 8 months, I believe, behind on the latest suicide figures in construction. I have been in contact with them. Trying to get a response is difficult because, again, numbers have been cut of staff. Look, we could talk about this probably for about 4 or 5 weeks. The bottom line is every year, for the last don't know how many years, suicides in construction have gone up. We know this is only a small percentage of the actual real number. If you're currently unemployed or your suicide is on under a train further, it's not classed as a construction suicide. The million-dollar question is: look, we know the reasons: working away from home, unfair working conditions, van and tool theft, getting knocked, all these things. How can we stop this? Because it's actually a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, just to start with, and this is just obviously my personal opinion, I think there's a worldwide pandemic in terms of mental health anyway, right? So this is not just a construction-only topic. I think there is a worldwide issue whereby mental health issues are rising and rising and rising, and I think so we have to take it with that in that background as well. But the construction industry definitely has a problem. What I would say, just to try and put a positive spin on it from the start, is I think that where there has been a very positive effect has been that there is now much more awareness generally of the subject of mental health. So in terms of awareness and in terms of making it being on people's radars, if you look at it from now, we're in 2024, if we even go back to 2010 or 2005 or 2000, it wasn't even talked about, right? So that now, the elephant in the room is, that's great, but suicides are going up and up and up. And I don't think, in all honesty, anyone knows why. We can have separate reasons for saying, okay, in the construction industry, like you just said there, working away from home, drugs and alcohol, macho culture, all this. But no one really knows, because if anyone knew that this issue, we'd be able to drive it down. Now, I believe that the industry's gone slightly wrong, or that it's done a good job in terms of building awareness at the bottom through the operatives. But I believe that it's done that because it felt like it couldn't get to where it needed to go to by going to the top. So I think it's the wrong way round. And the cynic in me thinks it's that way round because they don't feel like they could get listened to at the top to make a big enough change. And when I'm saying the top, I'm not just talking, the boards of directors of these big construction companies. I'm talking at the very top in terms of government. Because I don't think that government have done enough. So if you take, for instance, something that's happened recently, and I spoke about it, I think, in episode 2, Grenfell. Well, Grenfell happened, and then from that we had the Dame Judith Hackett report and everything else that followed. But actually cast your mind back to what happened, I can't get the date exactly right, in 2010, 2008 or something or other, it was the Lakanal House fire. The exact same thing happened, right? And what happened after? Nothing. Right, so if I'm going to get my numbers wrong here. I think it was probably 7 or 8 people that died in that fire. And then how many people died in the Grenfell fire? I think it was upwards of 80 people. And there's a brilliant book that if you ever want to read about what went wrong there, that encapsulates it all. Where are the bodies? How did it all go wrong? The reason I'm bringing that up is because the government didn't get involved in that until we lost even more people. And there's going to come a point when the government have to start listening to this issue and do something about it. And I just don't think they're there yet. Right? Well, but if you don't start at the government level, the contractors below aren't going to do anything with it. It has to start there. You have to have enabling legislation to actually 100%. Get this stuff through. Now they'll argue, well, it's in the Health and Safety at Work Act. There's lots about stress. There's lots about, there is. But look, I'm in the industry. I've been in it for 20 years. Not many people bother with that subject. They're not doing a lot with it because safety issues are easy to identify, right? Safety issues, someone falls off a ladder, very obvious. They fall and they break their leg. What's not obvious is about what goes on inside people's heads.
Because we're all different.
Because we're all different. And also, the elephant in the room, and this is what I really think needs to be nailed, is, and we've had many a debate on this. I've had many a debate with Steve Kerslake at Construction Sport, where he's pushing for suicides to be a riddor. But I think where this cut falls short is that no one can prove it's to do with the work. So the companies, they'll say, well, it's got to do with human factors at home, and it's a personal issue. It's not a work issue.
I disagree.
No, yeah, I'm not
because
saying
I know of one suicide where the family went into the husband/dad's personal, not work email after his suicide and found so many messages, basically to his boss of a tier 1 saying, I can't cope with this workload, please help.
Yeah.
Now, you can't therefore put a blame. I mean, I know that situation was different. It was a beautiful family, successful, nice house, good standard of living.
Yeah.
But again, going back to government, the work I was in Parliament, a few months ago, had no concept. So I was with the levelling up housing doodah, and they have no concept of what's on the ground.
No.
Now, the reason that I've got a bit of a bugbear about this is primarily they listen to Construction Leadership Council. Construction Leadership Council, from my research, and like yourself, been in the industry quite a long time, was self-formed X number of years ago. But they talk about tier 1 and tier 2. So that's the 2% that we talked about previously. Yeah. Now, there's a whole world. If you take 2% of 3.2 million, it's not a lot. But all this other stuff going on, they're not going to report on because it doesn't affect them. Yeah. And they're not going to advise changes in regulation to come in if it means they're going to make less profit. That's me being negative, but that's real because I've been in and spoken to them. I think what we need to do, and this is one of the primary reasons of the Build Network setting up, is to work with government, give a voice to you as a one-man band painter and decorator, to Sharon, who's got a plastering firm in Hertfordshire. It doesn't matter. So we can work with government and actually make these changes because we've got to have it from the top.
We do.
There's so many good people, as you mentioned, Steve, at Construction Sport, many others that are doing this work, but it's not going to the right people.
No, and look, there's great work that's been going on in silos. There's people like Mates in Mind who are very good at the active measures of actually working with companies to stop people getting into crisis. Yeah. Then there's other organisations around who help people in crisis, and there's helplines and all. But the problem is that especially at the charity level, people are all fighting for the same funds, and we're not going to get into this one, but I believe. What does it need? Well, it needs someone to oversee this. It needs someone to oversee these people who are trying to do their best in the industry, and it needs someone to tie it all together. But without government taking the lead with it, everyone's going to be working in the silos because they're essentially fighting over the same money. So it's all in answer to. We're definitely not going to solve it here, that's for sure. But it's from where I'm sitting. It's confused. It needs somebody to take the bull by the horns and lead it through. I believe that needs to be government. I don't think government are going to go anywhere near it, especially now with a general election looming and everything else. It's just not going to get to the top of their radar. Of course it's not. So then what can you do? Well, the industry can't sit still. The industry needs to start doing it from within. I really don't know the answers to it. I don't. I've got lots of ideas, but it needs. I just think it needs somebody to lead it through.
It's got to come from the top. Yes. And as we've said, if the CLC pretty much they're the organisation government are listening to for the industry. Yeah. But if you strip that back, to me that doesn't work. A, it's 2%, and B, the chairs, the co-chairs, the board aren't going to put stuff in place or recommend to government that are going to mean less profit and bonus. Yeah. You've then got the rest of us that are represented by the FMB, allegedly, in government, or they listen to. Now, again, to me, that could work really well. But they've got, 6,000 members, give or take? That is not the 3.1 million of the likes of you and me. So I think what we need to do is almost have a separate / new panel, committee, call it what you want, where we actually feed into government and say, look, this is the reality.
Yeah, and also, but if you could, just like we talked about in health and safety, right? This really is no different than and it's a lot more complex, but do a risk assessment, you look at a hazard. So let's take, for instance, working at height, and then you put your control measures in. They're asking the companies, the organisations who make up the industry, to come up with the control measures to eliminate the risk or reduce it. Okay, it's really no different if you put mental health in that equation. So you've got 20 people working for you. Mental health is the hazard. Okay, something with the potential to cause harm if it's not managed correctly, right? Okay, then what do you need to do about it? Companies also need to play their part in this, and they need to see it as their workforce. It's not just about safety related issues in the workforce and falling off a ladder or whatever. It's actually, well, if one of your team members can't get out of bed of the morning because they just can't face the day, that's going to be just as much a drain on your company, no matter, also looking at the moral issues and implications as well. So we need to get companies to understand that by managing this issue, this hazard, mental health with their workforce, again, they'll have a happier, more productive, more profitable workforce, and it'll be better for their business, rather than them seeing, oh right, this subject, because I know I speak to a lot of people and they go, they don't understand it, or they see it as this big thing that they're just so scared of getting it wrong. If I say the wrong thing, right, and we could all go on about mental health first aid and all this if you say the wrong thing and that person then decides that they're going to attempt to take their life, right, could that come back to me? And there's all of this at play where people just, a lot of these people who own these companies, they don't want to go near it. Yeah. It's just this big thing that's just a scary thing. And I understand it. It is scary what's happening. But ultimately, I always try and just take stuff back to the human level. Like, what's the right thing to do from the heart as a human, right? Well, it's to look after, I've got a team of 18 people. I want to look after each and every one of them as if they're my family, and I'm not saying they are family, because it's very different in the business, but I want to look after them because I want to do right by them. And I think there are so many good people in construction. There are the
vast majority.
There are so many
100%.
Good people. And there are so many people who want to do the right thing. It's just, do they know what the right thing is? And then obviously profits and everything else.
Back to that word that you use quite a lot, leadership.
It is leadership.
But to finish on a positive, on a fairly difficult subject, again, one of the reasons we launched the Build Network is construction, as you say, is full of amazing people, right across the, depending on what sector or role you have. The industry is at tipping point.
Yeah.
And we've been planning this for about 3 years. It could go one or two ways. When something's at tipping point, you've got a chance to do something positive. Yeah. The other good thing is, the industry's not going away. There's 3.2 million of us with nearly 10% of GDP. The money's there to make a difference. Yeah. So I think it's a good time to address it. Yeah. You're not going to address it when you've got the big peaks, or even the 07, 08 crash, or the one in the 90s. Yeah. So I think we're at a good time to make this. And I firmly believe, from the conversations that we're having with both parties, it's also a vote winner.
Yeah,
most of us don't vote.
No.
Now, I've worked all over the world, and when your average trade, I want to vote, they'll all say, well, actually, we're forgotten as an industry. And I want to finish on this because Brexit happened, love it or loathe it, we lost a lot of skilled workers. That's a fact. They ain't coming back. I've got a couple of friends that used to employ a lot of Eastern European workers. Their economy's picked up. They're working with their families. They're not coming back. So that's a big glut. Record numbers leaving. But if we look at this as an industry thing, we've got a massive opportunity to turn it into a positive.
I couldn't agree more.
And I really do believe that government need to bring this in, because we got forgotten after Brexit. Oh, COVID, hang on, construction, send them back to work. You had 2,000 workers signing in on their forms in the morning, all using the same pen. And all these things going on. We've kind of been forgotten as an industry. Can you imagine if one of the parties came up and said, right, part of our manifesto is for construction, bang, votes. Yep. And I believe something good's going to happen. So let's finish there on a positive. Trying to turn mental health into a positive, we always will try to do that. Now, next week, the final episode, we've obviously had the first episode, the introduction of health and safety. The next one, we looked at all the different areas, the working at heights, falling off ladders. We focused on mental health this week because it's the biggest killer. Jack and I could talk about this for months. We're very passionate about it. But next week, how we're going to move the industry forward. We're going to be positive. And Jack, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to sort it next week. So make sure you join us for the final episode discussing health and safety in the opinion piece.